Before making a final assault on the summit of the pyramid of guitar music theory, I wanted to share something with you that's really the third and last part of a complete fretboard orientation system. Now, the first part of this system, the caged system, has been around a long time and is taught in many places. Over the years, I developed two further stages to go with the caged system. The first of these I called the sandwich exercises. Now, whereas the caged system enables you to quite quickly find any note on the guitar fretboard, the sandwich exercise takes you several steps further and enables you to play any scale, mode, chord or arpeggio anywhere on the fretboard in any key, framed in one of the 7 octave patterns that comprise the caged system. This third stage then that we're going to cover in this lesson really wraps up all the loose ends. I like to call it the infinite virtual fretboard. And the end result of following this lesson will be that you'll be able to locate all the notes from any of these musical elements, scales, chords, arpeggios or modes, anywhere on the fretboard, including those notes that don't fall within the 7 octave patterns of the caged system. As far as the subject of fretboard orientation goes, I think you can then consider the learning of the subject complete. Now, if you haven't fully grasped the caged system or haven't put much time in on the sandwich exercises and you've any doubt about these two areas, now is a great time to go back and just run through those lessons again. You'll find them in the Guitar Music Theory Part 1 course. Okay, now in the sandwich exercises we take the fingerable octave patterns on the fretboard and boil them down to just 7 shapes. 4 forward diagonals, and 3 backward ones. Now, do spend a few minutes just re-familiarising yourself with those 7 patterns if they are at all rusty. Now, over the next few minutes, I want you to follow my explanations and demonstrations without worrying too much about whether this is going to be much use to you or not, or indeed about whether it makes any sense at all. Like a good mystery novel, it's all going to come together at the end and make perfect sense, I promise. What I want you to do is imagine that your guitar fretboard extends off into a virtual world, allowing you to have an infinite number of extra guitar strings on your fretboard in both directions. So I couldn't resist that. Okay, then imagine that this enables you to play an extra couple of octave patterns when you move across the forward diagonal patterns like this. Similarly, I want you to also imagine that this enables us to extend the octave patterns downwards, like this. so that altogether we've extended our forward diagonal octave patterns like this. Now let's go on a similar flight of the imagination with the backward diagonals, continuing them upwards like this. And downwards like this. So that altogether we have okay, so far so good. Now let's try this out. We'll set ourselves the task of covering the whole fretboard with the notes that make up the natural minor scale. First off, we need to just practice the basic forward diagonal pattern for this scale. So I'm going to do this in A, starting at the 5th fret. Work for it a few times. Here's the diagram to help you. Then we need to remind ourselves of how it alters as we move across the fretboard. So off the 5th string, it's the same. Then off the 4th string. We need to remember to use these 2 fingers when we hit that 2nd string. And off the 3rd string. We have to immediately move up a fret there and use the 1st and 3rd fingers there on the top string. So far we've just followed the normal instructions for the playing the sandwich exercise with the natural minor scale. But now this is where we move into the virtual space of the imaginary extended fretboard. So off the 2nd string I'd play and then off the top string I'd play real world, of course, we don't actually have to pretend to play the notes on the virtual fretboard. It's just that by imagining them there, we can better understand the notes of the partially completed octave that does fall on the real world fretboard. By imagining the whole octave pattern, we automatically locate these notes with the correct fingering. Same goes at the bottom end. And we repeat the whole process with the backward diagonals as well. So the basic forward diagonal pattern is like this. Then from the 5th string, that string comes up a fret. Then from the 4th string, shift up now. Then expanding into a virtual fretboard. Oi! And at the bottom end, where were we? And okay, well, I hope I managed to keep you with me so far. Now let's start making some sense of it all. We're going to use what we've so far looked at in this lesson to cover the whole fretboard with the notes of the A natural minor scale. Now it doesn't actually matter where we start, but for the sake of simplicity, let's start with what we'd normally call the first position. So I found my A here at fret 5 on the bottom string. And I start with a sort of framework of the cage system octave pattern, the familiar E-shaped pattern. And that gives us 2 complete octaves which we can simply fill in using our sort of sandwich system, sandwich exercise. But notice that that leaves us these extra notes which we can reach in this position, but they're part of the next octave, which is a virtual octave. So we imagine going up to there, to that point there, and we start playing, but that's as far as we can get before we fall off the real fretboard into the virtual one. So altogether we put this octave together, followed by this one, followed by as much of that one as we can fit in, and then we come back and that's our whole position covered. One thing to mention at this stage is notice that the octave patterns sort of zigzag in this dimension. So this octave pattern zigs in that direction, and then for the next octave pattern, we're on a zag going back that way, and then that virtual octave pattern is a zig. So we've gone zig, zag, zig. Now I'll be reminding you of that again in a moment or two. Finally, having worked out the position step by step as we've just done, I drill it in a particular rhythm. Basically all I'm doing is emphasising, accentuating the cage system notes, the actual root notes or key notes of the scale. The A, 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 and in particular, this really reinforces the idea that this little bit at the top is a fragment of the scale, a fragment of one octave, not a complete octave. That'll make more sense as we go along. So now we link to the next cage shape. After E comes D. So I used the cage system drill to link from the E shape up to the D shape part of the cage system. There's our E shape, so using that as the link note, I'm up to the D shape. So I link those 2 notes using the sandwich drill system. Now that's a zig, so I'm now thinking of a zag going back that way into our virtual fretboard, and I start the pattern that will complete that virtual octave, and that gives me that fingering on the top string. So far we've got and then we extend it downwards. That was a zig, so we go back to a zag. Onto our virtual note there. put those three positions together. Emphasising the keynotes to drill the position. So that's the second position. Now, don't be afraid to mess around a little bit with this. Once you've sort of orientated yourself by establishing the drill, don't be afraid just to sort of mess around with the patterns, perhaps a bit like this. Keeping aware of those keynotes. And this helps you bridge the gap between exercising the scales and actually improvising with them. Okay, so then we're going to move to the next step in the cage system. We've used our E shape pattern, D shape. Now we move up to the next position, which is the C shape. So that's the core of this position, and we link those two notes with the backward diagonal pattern. I'll do that again without the wrong note. So that's a zag, if you like. So before that there must have been a zig. So the bottom end here would be, and that virtual bit there, which you can imagine. Then we're into the core octave. And then we've got another zig. There. So having worked it out, we then drill it, emphasising the keynote. Oh, I've done it again. Notice the fingering change there that caught me out. Need to bring that first finger up there to get into that pattern there. And again a finger shift here. And once we've established all that, we simply mess around with it. together there and improvising ideas. Okay, so after our C shape, we'll be moving up to the A shape part of the cage system, and we follow the same procedure again. There's our core octave pattern, which we can link a forward diagonal shape, and then we can zag back in that direction. That tells us it's a backward diagonal. This end we extend back this way again, it's a backward diagonal. Then we draw the whole thing, emphasising the keynotes. Start messing around with it. Sounds like Christmas carols. Okay, so that was the A shape, and then we link to the G shape. I think I'll probably take this down to the bottom octave, all the way down here. So like with the E shape, here we've got two complete octaves, a backward one and a forward one. And at the top end, we haven't actually got any extra bits to bolt on, so that's complete at that end. Whoops. And at the bottom end, really only a couple of notes, well, one note to add on, because that's this having come back this way, the next octave would be down that way, so it'll be a forward diagonal. So it's just those notes. So again, we drill it the same, emphasising the keynotes. Way. Mess around with it a bit. So, if I was sort of drilling this myself, when I come to the end of the session, I'll probably just run through the whole thing in order. Perhaps like this: key of A, E shape, D shape, C shape, A shape, G shape, and then probably just sort of jump around a bit, starting the A sharp. Play a few at random like that, and then just jump around a few different keys as well. Let's just do D minor. And just by kind of fiddling around like this, before too long you almost unconsciously get these patterns into your fingertips. Don't worry about the odd wrong note here and there, that all comes out in the wash. Then you can start the whole exercise again using the harmonic minor scale. But we'll leave that for another day. Now, what I like about this exercise is the way it works on several different levels at once. Most scale training systems just train your fingers really to follow certain patterns, but this system enables you to learn the scale patterns intelligently in a way that means it's far easier to integrate them with other similar musical patterns. For example, the natural minor scale is a close relative of the blues scale. So in this octave pattern here, I can throw both those scales in and see how they relate to each other. Same with the top octave then. Natural minor scale. Blues scale, fitting into the same musical space more or less. We could put the minor 7th arpeggio in there. 1 flat 3, 5 flat 7. You can see how that fits in with the blues scale. And the natural minor. The same musical space, and then you could throw it into the top octave as well. Natural minor, blues scale, minor 7th arpeggio. And this is really useful for improvising. You can also fit the chord shapes into this, so you can see how that E minor shaped A minor chord there, or A minor 7th chord fits these other patterns. Blues scale, minor scale, arpeggios. And then in the next shape we'd see the D minor shape fitting into the same kind of scheme of things. There's our minor 7th arpeggio fitting neatly into the D shape chord, and so on. And you can see that what holds all these things in alignment, the one thing that they all have in common, are the cage system octave patterns. Well, I hope you enjoyed your first voyage, your first Star Trek-like voyage into the shadowy world of the infinite virtual fretboard. Once you've grasped this concept and got used to using it, I think you'll find it helps you resolve a whole number of musical orientation issues on the fretboard. And for me, it was definitely the final missing piece of the jigsaw. Well, it's back to pure theory for the next lesson, when we're going to start taking a look at harmonising minor scales. So I look forward to you joining me on that one. And meanwhile, live long and prosper. Beam me up, Scotty.